Now, on Wednesday, Tony Blair, former Prime Minister, now Middle East peace envoy and multi-millionaire consultant, delivered a portentous speech warning that Islamist ideology poses a real threat which is destabilising communities and nations and undermining peaceful coexistence in an era of globalisation. Now, in the face of this growing threat, which Tony Blair warned is spreading across the world, he said, "We seem curiously reluctant to acknowledge it and powerless to counter it effectively." Is he right? Is Islamism the biggest threat to the modern world? Anne-Marie Waters from Sharia Watch, is he right?
Yes, I think he is right, but not because he's Tony Blair. And I think it's very important that we don't fixate on the messenger here and look instead at the evidence. And the evidence is all around us, that there is a global Islamist political movement. It does rule countries, it does destabilise countries. It is, as the Arab Spring showed us, it is powerful, it's organised, and it's waiting in the wings to take over even more countries than it's already ruling. But it's not only in the Middle East and North Africa, it's also growing in Britain, it's also growing across the West, and we are reluctant to confront it. Even the fact that we're having this debate shows a reluctance to confront it, because the evidence for it is all around us. We have Islamists in this country who openly call for brutal Sharia, brutal forms of Sharia, brutal punishments, and they are running a pseudo-family court system. We have extremists speaking in mosques, calling for Sharia, calling for brutal punishment.
OK, we might well address some of those issues. Let me get back to the speech, just to focus, if I may, for a minute. I mean, Tony Blair, cozying up to the dictator General el-Sisi, in the speech rather lamely decrying the death sentence for 500 members of the Muslim Brotherhood, calling for the enemies of Islamism to be bolstered wherever they are, as happened with Saddam Hussein back at the time of the Iran-Iraq war. Reading some of it, many people are saying, has he not learned any lessons at all?
Yeah, but it doesn't detract from the message. And I think this is what's important about it. Some of it, when I read it, I did think some of it was a bit rich coming from Tony Blair. But it shouldn't distract from the message. And the question being asked is Islamism a threat to the modern world? Yes, absolutely it is. And we have to separate that question from Tony Blair or anything else he may have done or said.
Abdul Bari Atwan, how much of... there is a threat, is there? Islamism, is there a threat?
It's exaggerated threat, to be honest.
But
and if it is a threat,
yeah.
Tony Blair is responsible for this threat.
Yeah.
He is the one who should be blamed for that. I'll give you examples, Nikki. First, he invaded Iraq, and he gave a base, a safe haven for Al-Qaeda. He, invaded also Afghanistan, and he created another basis. Whenever the West intervene by military means, they create a failed states. And who fill the vacuum there? It is Islamic extremism. The regime changes. Most of the regime changes took place in secular Arab countries. And these countries, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, and Bashar al-Assad, they are not Islamist. And look what's happening. I'm not defending them, but I'm just exposing the contradictions of Tony Blair character. It is the worst type of Islamophobia he is practicing. Now he is siding with Sisi, General Sisi of Egypt, who sentenced 530 people to death, his court, kangaroo courts. And there is a campaign now against Islam and Muslim brotherhoods, and he is trying to be part of this campaign. So to say that a threat, Muslim Brotherhood toppled in Egypt. They are not existed anymore. In Syria, they are struggling, and they are supported by the West, all these Islamic groups in Syria.
What about groups like Boko Haram, kidnapping schoolgirls to rape them, keeping them out of education? Is that Tony Blair's fault?
It's not, but this is very small incident here, but they are not posing a
4,000 dead over 4 years.
OK, but Tony Blair killed 1 million in Iraq. 1 million.
Anne-Marie.
idea that somehow everything is the fault of the West, as if other actors are incapable of autonomy, of acting on their own initiative.
I'm not invading you. We are not the... You are invading us.
Wait, let her answer, let her answer.
Someone argued with me recently that the Americans are responsible for the Taliban, and whatever the rights and wrongs of America bringing the Taliban to power, they are not responsible for what the Taliban does when it's in power. America is not responsible for the Taliban imprisoning women under burqas or stoning people to death. That's their own fault. They do that of their own volition. That is not America's fault.
Who brought Taliban to power? The American, because they were supporting the Mujahideen, the Islamic extremists you're talking about.
Of their actions when they're in power. This idea that everything is somehow connected back to the all-powerful white West is absurd. People are responsible for their own actions, and the only people responsible for the horror of the Taliban are the Taliban themselves.
Sam Westrup, as I said, I want to bring you in here. Did you not think, I mean, some people say, you know, maybe there were some truths in this speech, but it was, I've heard it said, undermined by some of the other things that he was saying, which in many people's minds were utterly jaw-dropping. Did you not think there was a slight irony? This is a man who waged what many believe was that illegal war, which has been referred to, which led to maybe, as the figure we've heard, 1 million deaths, created, as we've heard claimed here, many extremists across the world, and he's standing there lecturing the world about peace.
Sure. I mean, like Anne-Marie, I think one can differentiate between Tony Blair the man and Tony Blair's message.
Do you agree with the message?
In his speech, I agree very much with the message, and I think the media is particularly guilty in the last few days of ignoring the central theme of the message and pointing to suggestions that he wants Assad to stay in power, that he's defensive of General Sisi, that Ukraine doesn't matter, this sort of thing. None of this was said in the speech. What Blair is saying is not that there are evils we should ignore, but there is a greater evil we should focus on. And of course there is a campaign against the Muslim Brotherhood. It is, after all, a global organisation that seeks to impose a vicious, exclusive, absolutist form of Islam. And, you know, Sir Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6, called it at heart a terrorist organisation. And that's exactly what it is. And to complain that there is a campaign against the Muslim Brotherhood, well, good, I should hope there is. And Mr. Atwan, of course, you very famously said that were nuclear missiles ever to strike Israel, you would dance in Trafalgar Square. So I don't really think you can moralise.
This is misquotation. This is not true. This is not true. This is. You know, when we talk about you talk about the speech, when he is actually.
You need to make that clear. That's not true.
It's not true.
You never said that.
No. You know, it was out of context.
What does that mean?
You know, I was talking on our program. They just got a few seconds from that program. And anyway, who is bombing the Arabs now? The Israeli. Who are committing massacres against the Arabs? The Israeli. Who are sending their missiles?
Osama Hassan.
In Syria.
I'll come back to you, Osama.
I think we need balance here. Religious extremism, Islamist extremism is certainly a threat. It's certainly not the biggest threat to the world. You know, climate change, or capitalism without ethics, foreign policy without ethics, religion without ethics. Religious extremism exists in every religion. You have crazy Christian fundamentalists in America informing political dialogue, right-wing Jewish extremist settlers in Israel causing havoc with the peace process, just as Hamas are on the other side. You have Hindu extremists in India causing real problems. You have Buddhist extremists now causing persecution and genocide against Christian and Muslim in Burma. So religious extremism affects all religions. Unfortunately, you know, the Muslim problem is more visible or more highlighted, and this Islamist extremism is a problem. But Muslims have to look in the mirror and be honest about these issues and address them as common human issues. And I have to say, it is Arabs killing each other. Look at Syria, 150,000 people killed. When I went to Jerusalem recently, the guy in the Dome of the Rock Mosque, they have a display cabinet full of Israeli shells and CS gas canisters, which the Israelis have fired disgracefully into the Dome of the Rock Mosque over the last 40 years. But the Palestinian Muslim security guard said to me, we don't blame the Jews anymore. Look at ourselves. We're killing each other in Syria. How can we blame the Jews or the Israelis? So the issues are much more complex than that.
Yeah, Ajmal.
I somehow, for the first part of what Osama said, I agree that there are religious extremisms everywhere. The problem with Anne-Marie and Sam's perspective, as well as Tony Blair's perspective, is that they conflate and confuse Islam with Islamism. Islam as a religion never subscribes to extremism.
I don't think they said that.
No, hold on. Let me finish that.
Yeah.
It should never be confused with extremism and violence, because Islam as a religion doesn't subscribe to any of that. There are violent extremists in the world who come from various backgrounds. The problem is, does Islam have political ideology or political framework within it? Does it propose an economic framework? Does it propose a social and ethical framework? It does. As soon as Islam proposes political framework, it's no longer a private religion. It becomes a public one. Muslim Brotherhood, for Sam to say Muslim Brotherhood is an extremist at the heart, a terrorist organization of that nature, is completely misunderstanding the organization. I've read Muslim Brotherhood's literature from beginning to the end in great details, as other organizations. I don't think Muslim Brotherhood is like that, but current climate in the world would lead Muslim Brotherhood and moderate groups like that to become radicalized because of the crazy, lunatic ideas that we follow. For example, when General Sisi took over, we haven't condemned General Sisi. We have turned a blind eye to what's happened in the Middle East. If more than 60% of Egyptians want Muslim Brotherhood to be the government, what's wrong with it? If that's what they want, we should respect it. So democratic process is being undermined because some people don't like the outcome. The problem with us in the West is that we would like to see democracy in the Middle East, but we would like the right guy that we like to become the president or the prime minister. That's not going to work. So the truth is, Mr. Blair, who's giving this speech, he's also, remember, one of the private advisors to the dictator of Kazakhstan. That's really unsavory. He went running to the South Sudanese government to become their advisor. And he's the one who embraced Gaddafi from the darkness and gave him a hug. I can never forget those atrocities that have been perpetrated by Tony Blair's policy. So simply Tony Blair saying this is wrong.
And so, Anne-Marie, I saw you wincing a couple of times. I'm just interested as to why that was when Ajmal was speaking.
Well, I mean...
First of all, he was talking about the ideology, the belief, the theology.
The idea that Islamism can be completely separated from Islam, I think, is problematic, to say the least.
Why is that?
When these men, say, for example, if an Islamist government takes over a country and installs death by stoning...
What's an Islamist government, Anne-Marie? Could you just define it?
And installs death by stoning, say, they can actually find justification for that in Scripture.
But
if you have...
Wait, let her finish, let her finish.
Anne-Marie, that is the Bible.
Ajmal, let her finish.
If you have violence against women justified, as it often is by Islamist governments or those who seek to become Islamist,
I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll tell you what we'll do.
They can find justification in Scripture.
I'll tell you what we'll do. Osama sitting beside you is a Quranic scholar.
I know that.
He's an imam. And maybe you can politely explain to Anne-Marie why you believe that not to be the case.
There is a massive debate going on within Islam, and the issue of Islamism, excessively political interpretation of Islam, are a real problem. And the groups, Muslim Brotherhood and others, certainly do not speak for all Muslims. There are many, many millions of devout Muslims who oppose the politicization of religion, the hijacking of religion for political purposes in that sense. No, I'm responding to Ajmal as well. And it's true to say that the Western foreign policy for the last 60 years has been really problematic, supporting dictators for stability, like Assad, the two Assads, Gaddafi, and Saddam Hussein and others, partly led to the increase in Islamism and jihadism. That's part of the problem. Also, the Muslim Brotherhood, to be fair, is a wide spectrum, all the way from Hamas and jihadist-type groups close to the Muslim Brotherhood, to the people in Tunisia who have dropped Sharia from the constitution. These are Tunisian Islamists who have agreed on a on an Islamic secularism, if you like, and a purely civil constitution.
Wait, I want to explore this point first. I want to explore this point first because I think it's key, one of many key points. This whole bit about the confusion between Islam and Islamism, which in many people's minds must absolutely not be made. Now, Anne-Marie says there are crossovers, and some are saying that, I mean, Tony Blair in his speech said it's a warped interpretation.
Certainly,
of
the
Islam.
extremist versions.
Others have said it's a plausible reading of the Quran, and Anne-Marie's nodding. What's your response to that?
Islamism, including the Muslim Brotherhood, is a wide spectrum itself. And now everyone has the right, every believer has the right to have their politics informed by their faith. So from Maggie Thatcher, Nelson Mandela, Tony Blair, David Cameron, George Bush, there's all kinds of people all around the world, leaders and millions of people whose politics is informed by their religious values of truth, honesty, justice, working for others. So
Is
the Muslims have the right to
Islamism
do
a plausible reading of the Quran?
Can I respond?
possibly moderate and civic forms of it, yes, but there are certainly extremist interpretations of it which are causing havoc around the world.
You know, Nikki, I think this points to a far larger
Rabbi
discussion.
Esther.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. I think this points to a far larger discussion, to which you already alluded, about fundamentalist, radicalized religion and moderate, progressive religion. And I think that is the real divide. In a way, this entire discussion is a red herring. There are far larger issues to contend with here. We have 1 million Brits needing food banks. Right? There is poverty, there is environmental degradation, there's slavery in today's world, and I don't see Tony Blair giving a keynote speech about those things, right? So I think it's important, as a rabbi, it's important to draw the discussion back to the human level. As a rabbi, I am interested in building bridges between faith communities. I live in Britain, I work for the British community, and it's important to realize that the large majority of people want peace. The large majority of people are on a quest for meaning in their lives, and progressive religion can give people a quest for meaning in their lives.
Sam Westropp.
I often hear people from the far right say Islam is inherently evil. You also then hear people, church leaders, political leaders, say Islam is inherently peaceful. And I think, well, how do you know? How do you know what Islam means? Surely we should deal in realities. And this falls back to what Blair said, is that, and regardless of Blair's own hypocrisies and his statements, we should deal with the realities. And the reality is that Islamism presents a global threat to many people. And this is the most important point. By conflating...
Okay, Abdul, in a minute.
1 second.
Abdul, in a moment, let him finish. And Ajmal, I have you in mind as well.
When people accuse anti-Islamists of being anti-Islam, what they do is actually conflate the two. And that is a betrayal of moderate Muslims everywhere who are trying to free their
unintended consequence.
from the exactly, yes.
Yeah.
It's a racism of low expectations, a bigotry of low.
Abdul.
Did Islam kill 40 million in the Second World War? Did Islam invaded countries and kill millions like in Iraq, in Afghanistan, Syria now is supported by the West? It's not, all this killing is supported by the American and by William Hague and by David Cameron.
No matter
how do you say that? Just let me complete. How do you say that Islam is a threat? Tell me one example that Islam is a threat.
I say exactly Islam is
not
a threat.
Do we have nuclear bombs like you? Do we have missiles?
I say Muslim Brotherhood is a threat. I say Jamaat al-Islam is a threat. I say Al-Qaeda is a threat.
Where? What? The Muslim Brotherhood invaded any country?
Women and Jews, they are a threat. I'm not saying that represents Islam. You are.
No, listen. Did you say, give me one example that Muslim Brotherhoods invaded a country or killed a Western subject? Give me one example.
Just look at the Muslim Brotherhood affiliate in Gaza, Hamas, which throws its political opponents off rooftops, which
Hamas,
murders homeless.
Who invaded Gaza? Who used phosphoric bombs in Gaza? Is it Muslim Brotherhood or the Israeli, your friends? Tell me, give me one example.
The government kills its people. This is a Muslim Brotherhood affiliate. In Egypt, it takes over the institutions. It murders police officers.
Ajmal Masood, do you acknowledge that there are dangerous extremists? Don't they? Okay.
And one of the reasons why some of us have
you acknowledge there are
threats.
dangerous extremists. I think Anne-Marie said right at the outset, they are here. In this country, there are people with some pretty ghastly, pretty appalling views. I think Tony Blair's phrase was incompatible with the modern world. Do you agree with that?
You see, look, I even include Sam to be an extremist in his views. There are reasons for it. Recently wrote an article calling me an extremist.
Yep.
I've received death threats for speaking against extremism. And for Sam to make such silly statements in an article. So there are problems with the definition of extremism. It's very...
We're talking about laying bombs. Wait, this is so important. So we're talking about laying bombs. We're talking about killing fellow citizens
which is wrong.
On the street.
No, which is wrong in any civilized world. Here is the question, though. Let's ask this question that we've already asked about Syria. Syrians are now killing one another, as far as Osama is concerned, the Arabs are. But did the ordinary Syrians aid and abet and give arms to Assad, or are we doing that through China or other countries? The normal Syrians want freedom, just like Egyptians want freedom, just like people of Saudi Arabia want freedom. But because we constantly interfere, supply those dictators and despots with our support, sophisticated machinery, as well as weapons and intelligence, they keep those people who are seeking freedom under and constantly under repression. If you allow the Muslims across the globe the freedom to choose, they'll go through a democratic process and they'll choose a party that they feel very happy with. Now, the outcome we may not agree. Ultimately, the problem that Anne-Marie was highlighting, which is to do with Sharia.
But we chose not to intervene in Syria to protect the people who want change in Syria.
The Syrian people said very simply, don't come into our country, just give us the arms so that we can topple the dictator.
Some did, some didn't.
Yeah, which was the bigger discussion. But the point that Anne-Marie made, which is to do with Sharia, just clarifying it. Sharia simply has some objectives to achieve. Underlining objective is to deliver justice to the world, fairness, equality, etc. So the moral and the ethos behind a lifestyle is about establishing peace and fairness, justice, etc. What's wrong with that? If people can't find space to express it freely and they're being constantly repressed, and the byproduct of which we see as manifesting in extremism, we cannot blame the entire message for it.
Okay.
So Islam is clearly for one simple message.
Okay. Why do you think he's an extremist?
Well, for quite a few examples, I mean, you're a noted supporter of Jamaat al-Islami and the Muslim Brotherhood.
No.
But most extraordinarily...
Hang on. That's wrong.
Wait 1 second.
Sam,
respond to a second.
Can you please...
Most extraordinarily...
Sam, I've never supported
claimed the
Jamaat al-Islami.
Mumbai attacks were the work of the American intelligence agency.
I never said that.
I've got a Facebook post by you saying exactly that. In fact, I shall post it on the website of Stand for Peace right after
So
this.
we didn't hear it because everyone's talking at once, and you've had a say and you'll have another say. What are you claiming he said?
Ajmal claims in a Facebook post, which I have a copy of and which I will post on the website of Stand for Peace after this programme, that the American security forces somehow orchestrated the Mumbai attacks. He also claims shadowy forces were at work in the Westgate shopping mall massacre by Boko Haram.
I think you have misread completely. It asks question. Who is responsible for? That's the topic it says. Who is responsible for this? Who is responsible for that? I didn't say somebody is responsible. I was blogging in my page, asking questions, just like you ask. You see, the other thing you said about me supporting Jamaat Islami and Muslim Brotherhood, in my entire life, I've never been supportive of any of those organisations. I am very clearly British. I even stood for the parliamentary election in Britain.
Liberal Dem. Democrat.
So for you to suggest that, in itself shows your shallow understanding. In fact, no understanding of
Sam
Islam.
Sam respond, then you gentlemen here. Sam.
You also described the Hamas leader as an honest and great man. Look, Hamas judged by your own words.
Look, Hamas leader as honest and great man, as opposed to Benjamin Netanyahu, anytime. Benjamin Netanyahu, anytime, my friend. Sharon, anytime. Because they're the ones who are responsible for killing people, and Hamas leader isn't.
Sir, you're Imam. What would you like to say? Hamas, of course, their charter espouses the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was a Tsarist forgery, talking about Jewish world domination. They blame the Jews for everything, going right back to the French Revolution. They want to obliterate Israel. It's an uncompromising charter. It reads like something that might have come out of Nazi Germany. Do you support them?
I don't support Hamas. I think even Hamas is not an Islamic ideology. But what I'm worried about...
What is it then?
Well, it's not. It's a group that are supporting their own nation, their own country. They want their part of the country back. And this is actually been going on for many years. But we shouldn't mix this with Islam. I am hearing here, we are in the United Kingdom, in York, in North Yorkshire, and then we're just hearing voices calling Muslim evil and Sharia. And Sharia.
Who said that?
Yeah, he said the evil, mentioned
did he
as
call
Muslim.
Muslims?
Yeah, as Islam or Muslim or Islamist. You can't even come with the definition. The definition is not agreed on. Why is not agreed on? Because the government just label us any way they want. They want a terrorist one day, Islamist one day, Islamophobia other day, Islamophobic another day. And then what's about Sharia watch? What sort of Sharia in this country you're watching for? Who's funding you to pay for this, for Sharia watch? As simple as that.
Let her respond.
That's as simple as what Sharia. There is
let
no
her
Sharia.
respond. Let her respond. And also the Islamophobia. What do you make of that?
What sort of Sharia are we watching? The sort of Sharia that is the Islamic Sharia Council, the Muslim Arbitration Tribunal.
What?
And I have to say I disagree with your definition of extremism, Nikki. You don't have to plant a bomb to be an extremist. If you want to deny women any right to get out of a violent marriage, if you want to deny women child custody, you're also quite extreme, in my view, and that is happening as a matter of routine.
That's misinterpreted.
Well, tell that to them. Tell that to them, because they call it Sharia, therefore I'm calling it.
I don't like
What about this phrase, Islamophobia, which we've...
What's Islamophobia?
Well, it's a phrase that's used to shut down any criticism of anything to do with Islam.
Absolutely wrong.
Let me say about this. Islam now, and it's being thrown around.
Anti-Semitism.
Wait a minute.
Anti-Semitism.
Back to Palestine. You're Palestinian, sir, yeah?
Yes, I am.
What about Hamas?
Hamas is part of the Palestinian social fiber. We can't deny that. Hamas is the outcome of long decades of Israeli Zionist aggression and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, which started in 1948 when they destroyed 532 villages and towns. And by the way, we are only 18 days from the 66th anniversary. Hamas is the outcome of suffering, collective punishment, which has gone long time, and the world has turned a blind eye to it. So Hamas is an outcome to an action by Israel, supported by the West. Hamas is part of the Palestinians. Maybe I disagree with it, but I cannot deny that Hamas is a big part of the Palestinian social fiber.
And it's cause and effect.
When we're talking about aggression and talking about radicalism, I would add my voice to 22% of the British public who last year in 2013, according to the Express survey, want Tony Blair to be tried for war crimes committed against the Iraqi people. I would add my voice to the rising voice of trying Israeli leaders, including Tzipi Livni, who's coming here on the 15th of May, for war crimes against the Palestinians.
Right.
Abdel Bari mentioned white phosphorus.
I think we need to get a response to that.
The collective punishment of Palestinians, the killing of fishermen, just for fishing in the waters, the killing of farmers, the polluting of Palestinian waters, the killing of people who are waving white flags.
Can I get a response?
All this. Don't talk to me about radicalism and threat to global and Islamism. It's Zionism, it's Israel, it's big powers.
So you've made your point. I'm not censoring you. You've made your point very strongly, and we need to get a response. Who wants to respond to it?
I haven't mentioned any of what he was talking
I just would like
about.
to
I think we need a response first.
I need a response.
No, you'll get a response, but let's get a response from the other side.
I think the rabbi wants.
Yin and yang. Okay, Osama.
No, I think the rabbi wants to respond.
Osama, you are the spokesman.
No, there was a lot of accusations about Israel there. Do you want to come back on those accusations about
He
Israel?
can't deny it. If he denies it, he will be lying through his teeth.
Well, let's see what he says.
Everybody knows about
Let's
this.
see. Sam Westrop.
Were killed by Israeli so-called ethical army while waving white flags.
Can you let him respond, please?
The Israeli
Can you let him respond? Wait a minute. Sam Westrop.
Look, 150,000 killed in Syria, wasting time talking about the only free democracy in the Middle East.
No, it's not.
Smokescreen to hide from the real fact. In terms of actual casualty numbers since the Second World War, the Arab-Israeli conflict, in terms of casualty numbers, is about the 50th most deadly. It's something to be horribly concerned about.
What about the illegal settlements? What about the illegal settlements?
And 150,000 dead in Syria just because few people are building it.
There
are bigger problems, and this is precisely what Blair was...
a minute, but let's let other people speak.
This is precisely, to repeat, this is precisely what Blair was talking about, that there are many other issues that need discussing, peace processes that need resolving, conflicts that need stopping, but the threat of Islamism is the greatest threat to the West right now, both in terms of terror abroad and extremism here in the UK.
OK, in Osama in a minute, and I'll attempt to come back to you later on, and you also, Rabbi.
I've been waiting very patiently.
I know, we all have. We all have. Anyone in the audience want to make a point? Yes, there's a gentleman there, right behind Osama. Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Quick point.
Just two quick points. We've got to go back, I think, to basics. Islam, or Islamism, as I understand it, seeks to impose, well, if they can, impose Islam all over the world. Basically, let Allah rule the entire world.
Well, evangelical Christians have the same aspiration.
They do. But the problem with all of religion, really, is how you interpret it. There are people who would kill others for simply not believing in Allah, for instance. I come from Nigeria. There's Boko Haram there. The main... People conflate these issues. Some people say, well, you know, they just use that. Politicians use them to...
It's politically motivated.
Politically motivated, yes.
Okay,
actually,
just quickly.
They have made it very clear.
What is the motivation?
They have said they want to impose jihad. Sorry, I mean Islam, Sharia, I beg your pardon, Sharia all over Nigeria. That's what they want.
This is a key point. This is Osama, this is a key point. Is it about religion, or is it about people just using religion as a tool for power? Osama.
This was an extremist idea in early Islam, that the rule belongs to God, and that a small group of people decide that they know exactly God's infinite mind, if you like, and they know exactly how to rule the world in every little detail, and they're going to impose that by force over everybody. And it's true that there are Muslim extremists who want that. It's true that there are Christian extremists and others who want that. And aspects of the Muslim Brotherhood fall into that wrong thinking. This was a heresy in early Islam, and it has to be challenged. Muslims, and there are millions of devout Muslims who are fed up of the politicization, the extremism in our religion, hijacking religion for political purposes, and trying to enforce their narrow and violent interpretation of Islam over everybody else. And coming back to the other point, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict feeds so much hatred and division all around the world, and radicalism. You know, I spent 20 years as a committed Islamist. I went and did jihad. I burnt the Israeli flag outside the Israeli embassy in London. I know all about these topics. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict must be solved. We need a proper peace process. It's an unequal situation. The Israelis are far stronger. It's not an equal situation, as is often presented in the media, Israelis v. Palestinians. It certainly isn't. And we need the international community to do far more. Tony Blair is Middle East peace envoy, to do far more to actually get a just and lasting peace for Israel and Palestine.
Is he a good choice to be a Middle East
well, I think
peace envoy?
That has to be judged by his record. But we need to build.
It's done, in fact, zero.
No, Rabbi,
we need to build bridges amongst different faith communities.
But not through Tony Blair.
Yeah, I agree. And Israelis and Palestinians. I am patron and trustee of 3 different charities in this country which work on building bridges between Israelis and Palestinians. It is difficult, just like Northern Ireland was difficult, like Rwanda, South Africa. But when you have decades of conflict and murder on both sides, and the hatred and grievances,
no, when you say
it takes people. It takes people who are brave.
Who's the victim and who's the executor here?
Yeah, no, you have to move beyond victimhood.
No, we're not here to. I'm not here to get points or get popular with the audience. I'm here to say the truth.
Okay, Rabbi
The truth is that there is an executor.
Rabbi
which is
Esther,
Israel,
you've been listening and waiting very, very patiently,
for 66 years.
and I know you've got something to say, and we want to hear what you've got to say.
I think we always have to be careful to take it back to the individual human level. That is my interest as a rabbi, as someone who serves God and serves people and tries to hold God and people in the same thought, right? Every religion struggles with its interpretive tradition. Every religion has shadow sides and light sides. And that is an interpretive process that communities themselves have to engage in. The more you create hostility, the harder this interpretive tradition will be, right? Everyone has a narrative. Everyone has a story of pain, of grief, of anger,
of being a victim,
being a perpetrator. I am not here today to cast judgment on who does what. My interest here is to stand as a woman of faith, as a woman of progressive faith, and to demonstrate that religion can be a force for good in the world, and that religion can be a force for good in England.
Can I ask you a question?
And the louder the extremists shout, the more our voices are drowned out. It's time for people of peace and goodwill and tolerance to stand up and raise their voices.
No, wait. I'll ask you a question. You talk about there are, people in the shadows who are extremists. You don't want to be judgmental. Shouldn't you be judgmental about those people that are hijacking your religion, Christianity,
Absolutely, but
Islam?
that's across the board,
Isn't that
right?
Yeah,
that is across the board. That is fundamentalist
shouldn't you be
Christianity,
judgmental about those people?
Islam and fundamentalist Judaism. I am, but I prefer to live by example. What's the point of shouting when you can build bridges? I work with Muslims, I work with Christians, I work with Jews in real conversation, in real social action.
How do you stop them killing people, whether it be fundamentalist Christians or fundamentalist Muslims?
You stop killing people at my level, by building a stronger civil society in which we can talk to each other, in which we relearn a civil discourse on what...
Anne-Marie, no, Anne-Marie.
The problem you've got, it's all very nice what you're saying, but the problem you've got is that the other people have to agree with you. You can't sit down and talk to people if they want to kill you, no matter what the cost. They have to feel the same way in order for that dialogue to work. And some people don't want dialogue, they want force, and they want to
there are far more people who do want dialogue.
There are far more people, but you can't just ignore the violent people. They're there.
I am not saying I am not ignoring it, but there is a question of proportionality here, and there's also a question of what I can actually do. I am a pulpit rabbi. I sit down and work with people of good faith to alleviate real pressing issues here in England. We have to take it back home. What are the struggles that we are facing in England, and what are the struggles here in the world? There are 150 million.
And you said that.
150 million
said that
children in child labour.
Anne-Marie,
in the
last
world.
word on this. Last word on this. Anne-Marie.
Well, again, you know, you cannot... It's all very well... I'm all in favour of dialogue. I'm all in favour of finding common ground. But it's very difficult to find common ground with someone who wants to kill you. I'll use whatever language I like. I'll use whatever language I like. I'm telling it how I... Listen, and by the way, I am merely quoting...
Okay.
You simply don't like Islam.
Ajmal, listen, let her speak. Let her speak.
No,
let her speak. What? She spoke what?
Very long, you know.
Well, we have to acknowledge real failures.
Let's put the stopwatch on everybody.
We have to acknowledge real
Ajmal, I'm going to give Ajmal this is going to be a very quick last word.
Okay.
As I strive for balance, it's called Mission Impossible on this one. You're worried that people call it political. You say it's inevitably political, Islam. But when you look at another religion which can be intensely political, evangelical Christianity, for example, elements within the Republican Party, which does have an influence on foreign policy. Are you not as uncomfortable about that as others are uncomfortable about political Islam?
Anyone who preaches hatred, I'm uncomfortable with them. Whether they're Muslim, Christian, Jews, Hindus, it makes no difference. No God, no religion would want you to preach or practice hatred. No God and no religion would ever want you to practice or preach injustice. No God and no religion would want you to kill one another. If anybody says they are, then they've misunderstood God essentially in that religion, and I want that to be separated. Simply, religion is a great framework to creating a good society. Individuals who go wrong, we need to stop them from doing that by dialogue.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you all. I'm seeing some... No, we're out of time, but we've got to talk about the saints. Saints preserve us.